My name is Katarina, and I'm from a place called Chelyabinsk, Russia. I'm sorry if some of my English is not perfect. The point of this is to tell you a story of the day I thought the world was ending. It was in the morning of the 15th of February, 2013. Since I was still in school, back then in morning classes, we were studying some old Russian writers. That morning, we were reading a book by Maxim Gorky while discussing the themes of his writing. It was nice, clear weather outside, but even at past 9 a.m. in the morning, it was still mostly dark in the wintertime where I live. Because of this, when our classroom suddenly started to light up very quickly, almost like the sun was rising, some people looked to see what that was. All of a sudden, all I could hear were people gasping and saying, my God, again and again. Then I looked too, and this is what I saw outside. There was a huge ball of fire flying down through the sky. As it got closer and closer, it got brighter and brighter, until it flashed so bright it hurt our eyes. Then it went out altogether. A few seconds later, we heard a huge explosion, and then everything went quiet. The next thing I remember was our teacher rushing us to get away from the windows. Of course, no one listened. She began to scream about how the glass might break at any moment and slice us up, so we all backed off and tried to shield ourselves behind our desks. She had been completely right, of course. The next thing we felt was though we'd been hit by a gigantic shockwave. The glass from the window shattered all at once and flew inward towards us. There was so much screaming and shouting. We were all terrified. There were even people in my class asking, was that a nuke? Are we at war now? Our teacher tried his best to keep us calm, but even he was shaken and scared by what had just happened. We were all wondering what we should do. Our teachers told us very calmly to leave the upper floors of the building we were in and meet up at the school sports area, since it was a very sturdy and strong brick building. We all rushed outside together. We smelled this strong burning smell, and that scared us even more. I remember one of the boys in our class saying, "It's definitely an American nuke. You can smell stuff like this when one explodes." He had no idea what he was talking about, of course, but at the time it made all of us so scared. Our eyes were stuck on the sky, expecting more fireballs to fly out over our heads any moment. We were all terrified. We thought it might be the end of the world. I know now, though, that it was just my fear doing the talking for me. All of the students met in the sports area, and we listened to the radio to find out what was happening. That's when we found out that we were safe, and it was just a meteor having exploded in the atmosphere. Some other people in Chelyabinsk and other areas had not been so lucky, though. The meteor's explosion had hurt people, and even destroyed some buildings. I heard later that more than 1,000 people had to go to the hospital because of injuries caused by the explosion. When it had burst in the atmosphere, it exploded almost like a hand grenade, sending pieces of rock shrapnel flying everywhere. Some people had been hit directly by these pieces, where they'd crashed through windows and roofs, and people were cut by glass and debris. One person even had a broken back from being hit directly by a larger piece. I don't know if they passed away or not. More than 200 people were blinded by the flash or suffered a burning in their eyes for a short time because they'd been unfortunate enough to be looking at the sky when the ball of fire exploded. Those people had been much closer than we were, and so because of this, I think me and my class were very lucky that morning. The people that were closer to the explosion had been burned from how brightly it shined when it blew up. They called those flash burns. We were told it was the very same type of effect that happened when the USA dropped nuclear bombs on Japan, so although it wasn't a bomb itself, it had very similar effects. We also heard that a school that was much closer to the explosion was hit by a blast wave. One of their teachers was cut by flying pieces of glass. Thank God she managed to survive. Some people say she saved all their lives by shouting at them to get cover under tables. Her students were a lot younger than us. I can only imagine how terrified they must have been. Afterwards, people in the government suggested working with the Americans to invent some kind of early warning system for meteors. It was very alarming that they could just strike so completely without warning. So far, I don't think this will happen. People are so concerned with fighting each other on Earth that they don't look up into the heavens to see what's coming for us there. That new movie, Don't Look Up, reminds me of this. I know it's not supposed to be literal, but for me, the threat of meteors was very literally real that day, as my home region had actually been hit and scarred by one. Let me start off by saying I'm a 16-year-old male and an only child who lives in a quiet rural area surrounded by fields in Amish country. I'm going to use the alias John for this story. One Saturday evening, after an afternoon of occasional rain showers, I was home alone while my parents were out for their anniversary. They had just recently left to go out when I decided to take a walk now that the rain had stopped for I don't know how long. I go into my garage, slip on my shoes, and head on out our sliding back door in our kitchen. The backyard was large and fenced in, as we used to have some dogs. There was a gate in the fence just off the patio that leads to our underground swimming pool, then another that leads into the side of our yard. I exited through there and headed down to my driveway and onto the road. I was out for maybe an hour or so when I finally returned from my rather simple exercise of walking up and down the road while waving to any friendly neighbors I saw. I walked towards my side yard when I noticed that the gate I'd exited out of earlier was still open. I must have forgotten to close and secure it, I thought to myself. It was a bit windy that day, so perhaps the wind had opened it up because I'd forgotten. Oh well. I headed through the gate, through our pool area, back onto the patio, and in through the sliding glass door. Later on, as the night began to set in further, I had just finished baking and eating half of a frozen DiGiorno stuffed crust pepperoni pizza when I heard one of the fence gates slowly creaking open. Obviously frightened, I thought at first maybe it was my mom or dad coming home early. They'd always call me when they were on their way home from wherever they were at though, so that surely couldn't have been it. I ran throughout the house and locked every door and window. I waited and listened in my kitchen for any further suspicious sounds. After about 5 minutes of not hearing anything else, I thought maybe it had just been my imagination, or maybe I'd again forgotten to lock the gate on my way in and the wind had blown it open again. I decided to quickly head outside and check it out. By now, it was completely dark and cloudy, so I grabbed a flashlight out of a drawer in the kitchen and crept out the front door. Once I was out on my driveway, I shone my flashlight down the side yard towards our shed. Okay, nothing there. So far, so good. I walked down the side yard slowly and was pointing my flashlight in every direction, keeping myself aware of my surroundings. Once I finally crept up to the gate, I saw it was wide open. Must have forgotten to lock it again, I thought to myself. I face-palmed. I shut it and locked it, then turned around to head back towards my driveway. All of a sudden, though, I noticed something out of the very corner of my eye in the darkness. My heart dropped as I shined my flashlight quickly towards my backyard and caught a glimpse of the backside of somebody walking behind my shed. From what I saw, I could make out that this was a person with dark hair wearing a black hoodie and sweatpants, and they appeared to be carrying something in their left hand. I could just barely make out what appeared to be the blade of a knife or some sort of small, sharp instrument. At this point, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to confront this person or go inside and call my parents. I stood frozen for a few seconds, hand trembling, as I finally decided to call my mom. After 2 rings, she picked up. "Hello, John. You need something, sweetheart?" she asked. I felt a bit more comfortable now. "Yeah, Mom, I think there's someone in our yard," I said, taking a deep breath. My mom gasped, and her voice got a bit frantic. This was the first time something like this had ever happened. "Where are you now?" I continued, looking out towards my shed, now lit up by the flashlight. I could no longer see the person anywhere. "I'm out on the driveway. I heard the gate open and went outside to check it out." I saw someone. He was walking toward the back side of the shed and carrying something. I think it's a knife or something like that." My mom gasped again, and this time I heard my dad ask what was wrong. She told him what happened as I stood there and eyed for any movement. "We're heading home right now. Call 911. Don't go chasing him or anything stupid like that." "All right, Mom, I'm going back inside right now." After exchanging our farewells, I turned around to rush back into the house. Once I turned the corner to head back to my front door, though, I saw somebody walking down the road right in front of me. My heart sank as I stood there in shock, ready to flash my flashlight at whoever this was. The person stopped walking and stood still for a couple of seconds before slowly turning their head in my direction. They must have heard me walking as well. I instinctively whipped the light up and shined it at the person's face. It was a male, I don't know how old, dressed in a black zip-up hoodie and black sweatpants. No doubt it was the same person I'd seen behind my shed. I could only see one of his eyes, as the other was completely covered by something. He looked at me with this blank, expressionless face. It almost felt like he was glaring directly into my soul. This time, I didn't see his knife, but he did have his hand in his hoodie pocket. Without a single word or facial gesture, he slowly began to walk backward before turning around and continuing down the road. After a few seconds, I ran up the road in front of my house and peered down it. I didn't see him anymore. He must have entered someone else's yard. I ran back inside and waited for my dad and mom to get home, as I called police in the meantime. Once a state trooper arrived, I told them everything, from the gate being fondled with to the encounter I'd had with him in front of my house. The trooper told me there had been several calls in the past few months about a person matching that description I gave them being spotted in several different areas, acting very suspiciously. That interested me greatly, I must say. I tried to ask him more about it, but he declined to answer. Once my parents arrived, they talked with the trooper a bit before he finally left. Afterwards, my parents and I talked about what happened before sitting down to watch a movie, which made us all fall asleep together. Nothing much changed after that night, though. I still live here, and my parents still let me stay home alone, but we've gotten a home security system just in case, and I'm more vigilant whenever I'm by myself. The illumination of a creep's light shines on for anyone with intuition to see. That means that when someone isn't quite right, sometimes you can just feel it in your bones. I was working at a pizzeria in Seattle. It was a cold, rainy day in fall. Not many people order from a place that doesn't deliver when the rain is so unforgiving. My shift was spent enjoying the sounds of the rain and shooting the shit with my coworkers because of this. Perhaps doing my job every now and then when someone actually decided to walk inside. Every person that made a choice to step through that door showed their decision with tangible evidence on them, in the form of leaving sopping wet puddles everywhere and being completely soaked, like Hansel and Gretel with a breadcrumb trail to lead them right back into the storm. We were getting ready to close up shop when this one man came in. The rain clung to each strand of his hair. Some of the drops slid down his big pores, creating big wet streaks on him. It seemed he'd been out in the rain for quite a while. He stared at me for a second before I began speaking. "Welcome to so-and-so. How are you today?" "Pizza. I want some pizza." Anyone that's been in customer service can tell you that the question, "How are you?" commonly gets overridden by the customer's own question or request. Basically, they completely ignore it. I think sometimes they believe we say it because we just like the way it sounds or something. "All right, sir," I said. I looked at him with my pen in my hand, ready to write down whatever he wanted to order. But he didn't order. Instead, he just stared at me, and stared some more. Finally, after what felt like enough time for our entire species to go extinct, he said, "Give me a pepperoni slice." I took his order, he paid, I smiled and gave him his change, but he didn't go anywhere when I handed it to him. Usually, people would want to sit down or wait in the dining area, but instead he just stood by the counter watching me. I would turn around occasionally, feeling his eyes focus on me with more interest than I've had for anything in my whole life. He didn't even blink either, he just would not stop staring. "You got a boyfriend?" he said. "Yes." "You're lying." My heart dropped. Lie or not, no one with good intentions calls out someone rejecting them because they're obviously uncomfortable. A decent person would let this slide and accept the fact that they just weren't into you. "Well, I'm not lying, but I guess you can believe whatever you want," I told him. There wasn't much noise until my coworker wandered out from doing dishes. He started talking to me and making eye contact with the strange man who was staring at me. The look on his face told me something didn't feel right to him about this situation either. Thankfully, the pizza slice was done quickly. Longest 5 minutes of my life. I handed it to him. "You need a ride home?" he asked me. "No, I'm fine." "You shouldn't have to take the bus in the rain," he responded. "I have a ride, so thanks, but no thanks." "Oh, come on, it's not like I want to rape you or something. I'd just take you home." That's when my coworker said loudly that he would be taking me home, so the guy could just leave right now. The guy kept insisting, asking why we wouldn't just trust him to take me from work to my house, and we kept saying it was not necessary. He kept continuing to press. He kept saying things like, "She would come back to work the next day, man. I don't know why you're being so weird about this." We kept on telling him no, and he was getting visibly frustrated. He went back to his big black truck, parked right outside the shop, and just sat there and watched me for a good hour as we closed up. I did have a knife, pepper spray, and a taser, so I wasn't too afraid, at least while I was inside. My coworker was not a small dude either, and wasn't afraid to defend someone in need of help. I was more concerned he would follow me to my house and try to break in after. Luckily, when he saw I was not going to come outside, he eventually just drove away. I didn't put this together until after the fact, but when he said you shouldn't have to take the bus home, not once had I ever mentioned that I took the bus home, and there were plenty of cars in the lot as well. I feel like he must have seen me or been watching me before without my knowledge. I never saw him again after that, but I did occasionally feel like someone was watching me. Here's hoping I never meet him face to face again. My high school held an annual Euro tour, and I went on my first one in 2011 when I was 16 years old. There would always be a bunch of teachers and parents that came along to supervise, including our headmaster. Almost everything was scheduled, but we did get a few hours every day to go and explore the cities ourselves. The tour was always 12 days long. This would be my first experience on a plane, and so my first experience overseas as well. My friend and I were casually walking the streets of Rome, not too far away from our hotel actually. We were taking pictures and whatnot, wasting time before we met our entire group of around 15 kids and 4 teachers. We were going to meet up for pizza at a small restaurant close by. This comes into play with what happened later at the restaurant. Fast forward and we arrived there with everyone in tow, all sitting on the sidewalk eating pizza and chatting away happily. The teachers were sitting inside the restaurant right next to the door to keep an eye on what was happening outside. I decided to quickly go next door to buy myself a bottle of water. I didn't think to take anyone with me, as the tiny corner store was so close by that a few kids were even sitting nearby the entrance. After purchasing my water and leaving the store, suddenly I was pushed up against a light post by a large man in a dark jacket who'd come out of nowhere. He towered over me and opened his jacket to cover my body. He asked me my name. I was in such shock that I couldn't even respond, so he asked me again. I refused to tell him. Luckily, one of the girls saw what was happening. She ran over and grabbed me out of the man's reach. I immediately burst out crying, which alerted the teachers as well. Our headmaster, thinking he may have just been a drunk or something, shouted at him to leave or else. The man rushed around the corner and disappeared. All was well, and things calmed down a bit. I was now standing against the wall with 6 people in front of me, closer to the entrance. I watched, though, as the same man popped out of what seemed like nowhere once again. He tried to break through the people in front of me and grab me out of plain sight. This obviously caused a huge havoc with everyone around us. All the adults went on high alert and started getting involved. They began to chase the man away. He ran a little further down the road this time, hopped into a white car, and drove off as quickly as he had come. We got the entire group together again and were escorted back to the hotel. We were all very confused by this situation. Later that evening, we got our free time where we got to pick our own restaurant in the area to go to with our group of friends. We had to be in groups of 5. We dressed up, walked down the streets until we found a restaurant we seemed to like. The earlier incident had lost all its worry, with all the excitement and activities going on since then. We were very distracted. We then all, the whole group minus adults, decided to meet up at a bar. Since of course Euro tours can't be complete without the older group trying to act a little bit naughty, slipping in a few irresponsible drinks before curfew. As we got to the entrance, I was pulled inside by 2 of the people on my tour and told to sit down right away. Apparently, someone had spotted the exact same man that had tried to abduct me earlier in the very same white car, sitting parked a little further down a dark road. This time he was with another man as well. I broke down. We were all terrified. We explained what was going on to the owners as best we could and decided to head back to the hotel as a group, constantly checking around us and keeping count of every person. Luckily, we were leaving for a different town not many hours away very early the next morning. That experience still haunts me. I don't know where the man first saw me or what his intentions were exactly. He may have been following me the whole day, even through the night, knowing exactly what hotel I was staying in and everything. Being from South Africa myself, Europe was basically another world to me, and we had this idea that everything was safe and free compared to our own country. Now looking back though, I wish I didn't let my guard down so far. On another note though, Italy was very incredible, and the pizza and pasta and other foods were the bomb.